Well, hello, welcome to ReginaldESQ. I'm unhooking this my review of the Japanese Tier 4 heavy tank, the Type 95 Heavy. So, is it any good? No, it's awful. Truly awful. So yeah, it's really awful. And now, if we look at the Type 91 Heavy, which is the Tier 3 Heavy, as you can see, they look very, very similar, just that the R2-D2 unit is round instead of sort of hexagonal. And I think what happened is the Japanese army wasn't quite happy with this. They just wanted to be a little bit better, and they asked the engineers to make some incremental improvements. However, the engineers misunderstood and thought they said excremental improvements. Yeah. So I'm going to compare this. There are three, actually there's four heavies at Tier 4 now, if you include the B2 Premium, but I can't find any stats on the B2 at the moment, so I'm not going to include it. It's very similar to the B1 French Heavy anyway. So you've got the French B1, the German DW2, which is one of the worst tanks in the game, and the Type 95 Heavy here, which is also now joined that club of one of the worst tanks in the game, I believe. It has 430 hit points, the DW2 has 440, and the B1 also has 430, so it's equal lowest. I mean, it's about the same anyway, DW2, not much difference. As far as the weight goes, it weighs around 29 tonne. Now, they're all similar. The DW2 is about 30 tonne, and the B1's 29.5, so it's a little bit lighter than the other two. Not much. Speed-wise, though, this is the slowest. It's 22 kilometers per hour in forward and 10 kilometers an hour in reverse. This is truly a slow tank. The DW2 is the fastest with 35 kilometers an hour in forward and 12 in reverse. And the B1 does 30 in forward and 10 in reverse. So 22 in forward, pretty darn slow. The track traverse of 30 is sort of smack in the middle of the two. The DW2 has 32 and the B1 has 28. So the track traverse isn't great, but neither are the other two. Turret traverse of 33 isn't great. The B1 also had a poor track traverse of 31. And the DW2 has, a turret traverse that was. And the DW2 has a turret traverse of 44, so not great. View range, though, on this one is better than the other two at 340 metres. The other two have 330 metres, and that does help. Signal range on this one, though, is the worst at around 443 metres versus the others both about 740 metres. So the others have good signal range and poor vision. This one has poor signal range and fairly poor vision. Camouflage, is truly awful. Camouflage on this is the worst, although the others aren't great. They are pretty big as well, but this is definitely the worst one as far as camouflage goes, and it is truly awful camouflage. Although it doesn't have the humongous cupola that the Type 91 had here, but the actual turret itself is a little bit taller on the Type 95. However, overall, the Type 95 is slightly shorter than the Type 1, so the camouflage is a tiny bit better. Gun depression is 12 degrees and elevation is 20. The DW2 has 10 degrees of gun depression and the B1 has 13 degrees of gun depression. However, due to the R2-D2 unit, overall, we'd have to say this has the worst gun depression of the three due to the R2-D2 unit blocking your gun depression when you get there. However, it's much better than it was on the Type 91 Heavy, and I believe it's because the gun doesn't have that funny bit at the bottom. Like the Type 91 had this big square bit at the bottom, and as you can see, even when you're kind of level with the top, it's kind of just going to scrape there. In actual fact, yeah, it goes up a little bit to get over it. Whereas on the Type 95, there's a bit of space there, so the gun can still point down. Now, if this tank has 12 degrees of gun depression, I reckon when it goes over the top of this turret here, it probably has about 8 degrees. It still has fairly good gun depression over the top of this one. Doesn't look like it should, but it still gets about 8 degrees. So it's not as bad, anywhere near as bad as it was in the Type 91 Heavy. But that's about the only improvement on the tank. Actually, quite a few things are worse than the Type 90. In fact, I would rather, other than the hit points, I would rather drive the Type 91 into the same battle as I drive this into, even with the higher tier. It's actually better than this, in my opinion. So let's have a quick look at the grind for this tank. And I went straight to the top radio, and I think even maybe the top engine as well, because I've got so many Japanese tanks now. But anyway, you need to upgrade everything. The guns, basically, the gun on the left, this Type 94 gun here, is a howitzer style gun. AP 30 with 100, or you can use the high explosive anti-tank with 90 penetration 100. So if you want to spend a fair bit on gold ammo, you could use the 90 pen out of that, but I can't see the point when you can use the gold ammo out of this. And 35 with the HE doing 160, it's pretty pointless at tier 4, 5 and 6, I think. So I just use this gun. 70 mils of penetration, 110 damage. The 110 damage per shot is not too bad, but 70 mils of penetration for a tier 4 heavy is pretty bad. Now, the DW2, which I believe is one of their worst tanks in the game, has 67 mils of penetration, so gives you a bit of an idea. It's not real good. 0.4 accuracy is okay for tier 4. It's alright, it's not great, but it's okay. 2.5 second aim time, though, is pretty long for a gun that doesn't do great damage. So, yeah, and a 17.6 rate of fire is alright. Not bad at all, actually. But that's not all there is to say about the gun. The gun is actually terrible, and I'll show you why very soon. I have binoculars fitted, camouflage net and toolkit fitted, small repair kit, large first aid kit fitted. My crew's not very well trained. There's 75 to 78% in the game that you're going to see. I've only got one game for you. I hated this tank. I actually hate this tank. I hate it so much. I'm actually going to use free XP to get to the next tank. I've got plenty of free XP. How much have I got? 165,000 free XP because I haven't used any for ages. So yeah, I'm just going to bypass it. It was just I don't know. I think I might have played 9 games or something, and I just can't face playing another game in it. That's how disgusted I am with it. I am disgusted with it. And yeah, so we'll have a look in Tank Compare to compare it a little bit so you can see why I'm disgusted in it. And then we'll have a quick look at Tanks GG for the armor, and then of course get into a game for you. Okay, so this is the Tank Compare website where you can have 3 tanks at once comparing them to each other. So on the left I've got the Type 95 Heavy that we're reviewing here, the Tier 4 Japanese Heavy tank. In the middle I've got the Tier 3, the Type 91, Tier 3 Japanese Heavy. And on the right I've got the M3 Lee, Tier 4 medium tank, which Jingles and a lot of people reckon is the worst tank in the game. I actually didn't find it that bad. If you stay back and treat it like a tank destroyer, hide in the bushes, it can do some damage. But just to let you show you how bad this particular heavy is, that's why I've got it in there. So let's have a look and see. Alright, so this heavy has 430 hit points. Well, that compares well with the Tier 3 tank, which only had 250, and compares pretty well as well with the M3 Lee, which is a medium tank. Signal range of 425 is the same as the Tier 3, not as good of course as the M3 Lee. Speed limit 22 km an hour is actually worse than the Tier 3 tank, which had 25 km an hour, and far worse than the M3 Lee, which actually does 38 km per hour. Speed limit in reverse of 10 km per hour is worse than the Tier 3 tank with 13 km per hour in reverse, and much worse than the M3 Lee, 16 km an hour in reverse. I think you can see where this is going. Weight of 29.2 tonne is a little bit heavier than the Tier 3, which is quite a bit heavier, than Tier 3, and it's a little bit heavier than the M3 Lee. Moving right along here, armor. Well, the armor is about 33% better than it was, or 33 to 50% better than it was on the Tier 3 tank. However, it's still thin enough that any tank you meet can penetrate you. So it really doesn't make any difference. It's still just too thin. Even HE ammunition is going to straight through your armor and do full damage in most cases. So although the armor is better than it was on the Tier 3, it doesn't make any difference. And if you look at the M3 Lee's armor, the M3 Lee actually has much better armor than our Tier 4 Heavy in every department. Even the turret armor on this top tank here is actually thinner than the hull armor, whereas the M3 Lee hull armor and the turret armor is basically the same, since it doesn't use its turret anyway. So, let's moving right along. Engine power. Well, 290 horsepower is better than a T3 at 250 horsepower. The M3 Lee has 440 horsepower. Power to weight ratios, as you can see here for yourself, M3 Lee is far away and better, but the Tier 3 is also better than the Tier 4. Track traverse speed, well, at 30 degrees a second, the Tier 3 is 2 degrees faster than the Tier 4, and the M3 Lee is way better. Now, fair enough, the M3 Lee doesn't have a turnable turret, so it does need better track traverse, but it also does have it. Terrain resistance, well, it's kind of better on the Tier 1 and not so good on the well, it's up a bit of give and take on the M3 Lee. View range is the best on the Type 95. That's where it's got the edge over the 10 by 10 meters over its Tier 3 counterpart and 20 meters over the M3 Lee. But really, your view range isn't that great. You don't want to be in front of anyone or where anyone can see you anyway, so you are going to be relying on other people spotting most of the time. Turret traverse of 32 degrees is slightly better than it was at Tier 3, and of course, this is not turret traverse on the M3 Lee, it's really just gun traverse because it doesn't really have a turret. Now, look at the gun. 110 damage per shot on the Type 95. 110 damage per shot on the M3 Lee. 70 damage per shot on what I think is the best gun on the Type 91. However, 70 mils of penetration on our Type 95 is truly awful for a tank that's at Tier 4 and is supposedly a heavy. Like I said, the DW2 has 67 mils of penetration. 81 mils we had on the Tier 3 heavy, which I said was an awful tank. 92 millimeters on the M3 Lee. With premium ammunition on the Type 95, we still only have 100 mils of penetration and it's heat. We have 122 at the Tier 3 tank and 127 on the M3 Lee if you want to use premium. So in every department, this gun just isn't up to it, in my opinion. But not just there. Here's the really bad part. The shell velocity of the AP shells on the Type 95 is only 453. It feels like a HE gun. In fact, you'll see in the gameplay, the shells take a really high arc, just like a HE shell. So you can't aim at somebody and shoot and wait for them to drive through the path of your shell, because it will just go way over the tank. It just... Shooting at range is incredibly frustrating with such a slow shell velocity. Now, the premium shells are heat, so even if you load premium shells, the shell velocity actually slows down to 362, and you've got even less chance of hitting somebody. Now, with the Tier 3 heavy, we had 810 meters a second, which is pretty good for Tier 4, and it stays that way with the premium as well. On the M3 Lee, we had 619, which is kind of between the two. It's a little slow for my liking, but it's okay. But if you wanted to use the APCR, it goes up to 820. But with this T95, shooting anything at other than close range is really difficult. 1941 damage per minute, not that I put a lot of faith in damage per minute, 1908 on this tank, and 2200 on the M3 Lee. Obviously, rate of fire 3.4 seconds versus 3 seconds on the M3 Lee, even though they have the same damage per shot. And 2.2 seconds rate of fire on this tank, although it does do less damage per shot. Accuracy is the same on the T95 as it was on the Type 91. A little bit worse, 0.41 on the M3 Lee. 2.5 seconds aiming time on the Type 95 versus 2.1 we had on the Tier 3 version, and 2.1 on the M3 Lee. This tank, Type 95, truly sucks. So the Type 95 Heavy on the Tanks GG website. Let's go to the hybrid view here, and we can see that the lower glacis is 25mm thick, as is the upper plate here. The beak of the tank is 35mm, as is the front plate in front of the driver. In fact, the whole upper superstructure is 35mm there, except for the R2D2 unit, which is 30mm. The front of the turret is also 30mm. The mantlet area is actually 50mm, and you might bounce a couple of shots off that. However, the cupola is just 12mm. Now, you can bounce some Panzer 1Cs, that sort of stuff. Multi-cannons, Tier 3s will bounce a few shots off these, especially if it's a little bit angled. The side of the tank is 30mm. The upper side part here is just 12mm. We do have 3mm of spaced armour down below here over the top of the 25mm that is underneath. The little R2D2 unit at the back is 25mm, as is the whole back of the tank. The upper deck of the tank is 12mm all around. So yes, we can bounce some Tier 3 multi-cannons, but that's about it. Okay, so we're in our Tier 4 Japanese Heavy, the Type 95. It's a Tier 4 game, thankfully, so we're top tier. The map is Winterberg, or Ruinberg on ice. Anyway, we're off and racing. So maximum speed of 22 kilometers per hour. It does reach that speed. It actually takes off all right. It just doesn't go any good. So we've got another Type 91 in front of us. I've given up with this tank. There is no point trying to hide in bushes. You really just have to drive forward and spar with other tanks because the shell velocity is so bad that hitting anything at range is almost impossible. Well, it's not impossible. It's if they sit dead still for a long time, you can hit them. It's just like hitting a tank with a HE shell. It's exactly the same as firing HE. It's quite difficult at long range unless they're stationary. So I've only played, I think, about 9 games in this tank. I am never going to play this tank again if I possibly can. Now, I did say the DW2 was, in my opinion, one of the worst tanks in the game. That was buffed not that long ago, the DW2. And I think this is probably, the DW2 is actually probably better than this now. But the DW2 is still probably not a good tank. And this may get buffed at some stage because it's pretty bad. Now, I had a reasonable game here, but really only because the players weren't very good. So we get a good shot into this guy. He gets a good shot into us too. He does 113 damage to us. That's the Saal 42, one of the fairly new tanks to the game. I see this was a Marder 2 there. He shot through the tank and bounced off me somehow. So whether that tank took a lot of the pen away, the Saal puts another good shot in me to 126. I shoot this, was it a 1C I think I just hit there? That was a Panzer 38T, Tier 4 scout tank. So I managed to track this guy. We're in luck because we would have got killed by this guy. But because we get the tracking shot and now we can keep him tracked, he cannot shoot us. And we managed to get some good shots into him. So, and that's pretty much how you have to play this tank. You have to stop tanks from shooting you somehow. So if you can track them, you've got a chance. So being pretty cautious. Well, I'm not really being cautious. I'm really just trying to brawl with it. But it's really, if I was against good players, and I'm not trying to say anything bad about the players I'm playing against, they're just not very experienced, so I'm able to get away with playing this game like this. But really, if they were half decent, I'd be dead already. So, is that a Matilda? Yeah, so we've got one shot into the side of the Matilda. We've got pretty much no chance of penetrating the front of the Matilda. It's got 75mm of armour in the front, and we have 70 mils of penetration. So I'm aiming here at our counterpart. That was a Type 91, so that was the Tier 3 version of this tank. We got him in the turret. Fairly accurate shot, actually, considering my crew's only about 76% trained this game. So going for the tracking shot again. We hit, but it doesn't track the Type 91 there, our opposition tank. Oh dear. Matilda behind, and he's angled. I'm going to try and penetrate his side, but I don't think it's going to go through. And because I don't really have anywhere to go. This tank is too slow to run. Nah, I'm not going to get him. I'm going to try and get around an angle a bit. He only does 55 damage per shot, but when you can't pen him and he can pen you at will, not much you can do. The Matilda has well over 100mm of penetration on that gun. Very rapid firing gun. And fortunately, I am saved by my teammates. I only have 39 damage left. Now, I realised this was a reasonably good game I was having, so I just used up my second repair kit to repair my ammo rack for the second time. If I was thinking that this game was just another terrible game in the tank, I wouldn't have used my 20,000 credit repair kit just then. But I used it because I thought, oh hell, I don't want to play many games in this tank, and this replay is probably going to be good enough to show you, so I used the repair kit. As you can see, trying to clean up at the end of the game, if your team's winning something, this tank is just so slow getting around. I had another game on this map, and I had to get to the other side. I managed to do alright. I killed a tank from long range, and then didn't see another tank for the rest of the game because I just couldn't keep up with people. Poor accuracy there, but we can probably blame the crew training, and I fired before it was fully aimed. At least we got that one in. Now taking a bit of a chance driving up here, because if there is a tank hidden up here in one of these bushes, it will have already seen me, and I won't see it until I'm almost next to it. This tank is, remember, so big and has such poor camouflage that if anybody's within, I don't know, if you're in their view range, especially if you fire your gun, they will see you. Oh, now this guy's moving. Watch how long the shell takes to get there. Now, what range is he at? I didn't see what range it was. It's fairly long range though. What's this guy? This guy is at 378 metres. See the shell, the high arc it takes?
That one bounced.
We bounced. Bounced off the back of that tank. So that was a class 1 in the tank. Sorry, but I just can't drive this tank anymore, so I can't bring you a better game than this. 755 damage, and we finished on top for XP on our team, which is alright, because we were top tier. We fired 21 shots, 16 of those hit. The accuracy actually held up pretty well, considering our crew didn't have very good training. And bear in mind, the tank, I'm sure, will perform better with a fully trained crew. Direct hits 16. Of the 16 that hit, 9 penetrated. Well, that probably won't change with a fully trained crew. Damage of 755. We received 6 hits. We actually managed to bounce one of them when that, I think it was a Marder 2, when it fired through that truck. That truck must have stolen a bit of its pen. Damage block by arm was 70 from that one shot. Vehicles spotted 2. We damaged 7, destroying 3, which is actually not too bad. 251 assistance damage as well. And we actually, look, the income for a tier 4 isn't too bad. Although, if you bear in mind, I actually did spend 20,000 credits on a second repair kit, although it doesn't show up in here because I've got a bunch of them. I bought them on special. So, yeah, but it is a fairly profitable tank in that respect, but it's just that I think you probably really not win as many games in this tank, so your earnings will drop because of that anyway. 785, I think it is enough for class 1 in the tank. Thank you for watching my review of the Type 95 Heavy. I hope you liked it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more reviews, please subscribe to ReginaldESQ. Have fun.